Boudica, the Warrior Queen's Vengeance. Part 1. Fire in her hair, fury in her heart. Britain AD 60. The Roman Empire stretches its cold fingers across the land, building roads, forts, and temples to gods the tribes do not know. At the edge of this empire stands the kingdom of the Iceni, ruled by King Prasutagus and his fierce queen Boudica. Tall, with blazing red hair and a voice that could hush a crowd or stir an army, Boudica was more than a queen. She was a leader born of grit, pride, and fire. When Prasutagus died, he left his lands to be shared between his daughters and Emperor Nero, hoping for peace. But Rome did not honor the will. They saw weakness, an opportunity. The Roman officials stormed in. They seized the lands, they plundered the wealth, and they committed an unforgivable crime. They had Boudica flogged, and they violated her daughters. Before a silent crowd, the queen was stripped and whipped as if she were no more than a criminal. Her children, royal blood of her people, were brutalized by soldiers who carried the eagle of Rome. What Rome expected was submission. What they ignited was a storm. Boudica rose, not broken, but burning. She gathered her people, eyes sharp with vengeance, voice ringing with truth. They have taken our land, our freedom, our dignity. Will we let them take our soul? The Iceni answered with roars. Other tribes joined, the Trinovantes, the Cornovi, all those who had bled under Roman boots. Together they became a tide, not a rebellion, a reckoning. At the head of it rode Boudica. In a chariot, her daughters beside her, she cut through the fog like a goddess of war. She carried no crown, only fire. Her hair streamed behind her like flame, her eyes alight with fury and hope. Their first target, Camulodunum, modern-day Colchester, a Roman colony, a symbol of conquest. The city was poorly defended. The rebels swarmed it, burning homes, temples, and garrisons. The temple to Emperor Claudius, the very monument to their oppression, was reduced to ash. A Roman legion sent to relieve the town was ambushed and annihilated. Panic spread like wildfire. Roman citizens fled or begged for mercy. They found none. Next fell Londinium, modern-day London. Governor Suetonius, unable to defend the city, abandoned it. Boudica's army descended, razing it to the ground. The markets, villas, and storehouses burned. The sky turned black with smoke. Then Verulamium, St. Albans. 3 cities, 3 graves for Rome's arrogance. It is said over 70,000 were killed. The roads were slick with Roman blood. No soldier, no settler, no collaborator was spared. To the Romans, it was savagery. To the Britons, it was justice. Through the smoke and ruin, Boudica became more than a queen. She was the scream of a people long silenced, the fire of a mother wronged, the storm of a land refusing to kneel. But the storm would soon meet the shield. Rome, though wounded, was not dead, and the true battle had yet to come. Boudica, the Warrior Queen's Vengeance. Part 2. The Last Stand. The Roman governor, Gaius Suetonius Paulinus was no stranger to war. He had been campaigning in the far west, crushing the Druids on the Isle of Mona when news of Boudica's revolt reached him. He returned with speed and fury, gathering the remnants of his legions, seasoned warriors, disciplined, outnumbered but unbroken. 10,000 Roman soldiers faced a force perhaps 20 times their number. But Rome did not rely on numbers, it relied on order. Suetonius chose his ground well, a narrow gorge flanked by woods. His soldiers formed a wall of shields, their backs protected, their flanks secure. Before them stretched a vast plain, and on it thundered Boudica's army. Thousands of warriors, chariots, women and children in wagons watching from the rear, certain of victory. And at the front, Boudica, standing tall in her chariot, her daughters beside her, she raised her spear and her voice. We fight not for gold nor glory, but for our homes, for our freedom, for the honor Rome spat upon. Let this day be the day they remember Britannia's fury. The Britons roared, and they charged. But Roman discipline held. Volleys of pila, heavy throwing spears, ripped through the charging mass. Then the legion advanced like a machine, gladii stabbing with deadly rhythm. The Britons, wild with rage, had numbers but not formation. Their own wagons, filled with families, trapped them from retreat. The field became a slaughter. Boudica fought as long as she could. Her chariot cut through chaos, her hair blazing like a banner, her voice rising over the screams. But even fury has limits. When the tide turned, it turned fast. The rebel line crumbled. Bodies lay in heaps. The sky wept ash and blood. The dream of freedom drowned beneath Roman steel. Boudica escaped the field, wounded not in body, but in soul. Her people broken, her cause crushed. She knew what came next: chains, shame, a Roman parade through the streets of Rome where she would be displayed like a trophy. She would not allow it. Some say she took poison, defiant to the end. Others believe she faded into the wild, spirit bound to the mist and moor. Her body was never found, but her legend took root. Rome rebuilt its cities. It wrote its histories. But in the hills and hearths of Britain, Boudica lived on, not as a failure, not as a warning, but as a flame. The mother who would not yield, the queen who rose when beaten, the warrior who dared to defy an empire. Her name is carved in stone, sung in song, whispered in wind. She is every voice that rises against oppression, every soul who dares to say, enough. Boudica did not win the war, but she became a banner, and banners never fall. They rise again, with every heartbeat that refuses to kneel. Arthur, the once and future king. Part 1. The Sword and the Crown. Have you ever felt the weight of destiny pressing down on the edges of your life? The kind that whispers through the wind and hums deep in your bones? That was the world in which Arthur rose, a land broken, weary, crying out for hope. Long ago, in a time when Britain was splintered by warlords and torn by constant conflict, the dream of unity seemed all but dead. But even in the darkest times, there remains a flicker of prophecy, a glimmer of fate that refuses to die. The prophecy spoke of a true king, not one born merely of royal blood, but chosen by destiny. And so came Merlin, the mysterious sorcerer whose eyes saw into the tides of time. He knew that Britain needed more than a warrior. It needed a symbol. With his magic, he forged a test like no other. In the heart of London, beside a towering cathedral, a stone appeared, and embedded deep within it, a sword. On the stone was etched a challenge in glowing letters of gold. Whoso pulleth out this sword of this stone and anvil is rightwise king born of all England. Nobles came from every corner of the land, lords, knights, warriors of renown. They strained and heaved, muscles taut, faces red with effort. But the sword would not move. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The people began to doubt. Was the prophecy just a cruel jest? But destiny often walks quietly. Far from the crowd, a young squire named Arthur lived in humble obscurity. Raised by Sir Ector, unaware of his royal bloodline, Arthur was sent on a simple errand to fetch a sword for his foster brother Kay. In his search, he came upon the stone. Thinking the sword was merely forgotten or left unattended, he grasped the hilt and pulled, and the sword came free. The crowd gasped. The strongest men had failed, and here stood a boy holding the sword aloft. Murmurs turned to shouts. Was it trickery? Was it chance? But Merlin stepped forward and revealed the truth. Arthur was the hidden son of King Uther Pendragon. He was the rightful heir. Thus began a new era. Arthur was crowned, and under his rule, Camelot rose like a beacon of hope. At its center stood the legendary Round Table, a circle without head or foot, where no man sat above another. Here gathered knights of valor and heart, Sir Lancelot the brave, Sir Galahad the pure, Sir Gawain the loyal. They swore oaths of chivalry, of justice, of defending the helpless. They rode forth with banners flying, their deeds echoing across forests and fields. Arthur found love in Queen Guinevere, and for a time all seemed blessed. Camelot thrived, but even in paradise shadows creep, and the seeds of tragedy were already taking root. Part 2: The Fall and the Legacy. Beneath the beauty of Camelot, cracks began to form. The love between Queen Guinevere and Sir Lancelot, Arthur's most trusted knight, bloomed in secrecy. Their hearts bound by passion they could not deny, even as guilt clawed at their honor. Rumors spread, whispers became storms. From the edges of the kingdom, Mordred, Arthur's own kin, twisted by envy and ambition, watched and waited. He saw the tension, the faltering unity, and knew his moment would come. The search for the Holy Grail scattered the Round Table's finest. Some returned broken, others never came back. The brotherhood that had once stood as unbreakable began to fracture. And when Arthur rode out to campaign far from Camelot, Mordred seized his chance. He declared himself king. He split the realm, and civil war followed. Arthur returned to a land aflame, kingdom against kingdom, brother against brother. On the field of Camlan, a final battle erupted. Blood soaked the earth as night clashed with night. Arthur met Mordred in the thick of the fray, the battle between father and son, good and treachery. Arthur struck down Mordred, but not without cost. His body, pierced and failing, could go no further. His last loyal knights carried him to the edge of a mist-covered lake. There, a barge awaited, its surface black, its riders 3 queens robed in silence and sorrow. They bore the wounded king aboard. "Where do you take me?" a knight cried. And Arthur, with the last of his breath, spoke of Avalon, a mystical isle beyond time, where wounds are healed and kings sleep, waiting. The barge drifted into the mist. Arthur was gone, but not lost. For it is said he is not dead, only resting, and that one day, when Britain needs him most, he shall return. On his tomb is written, Hic iacet Arthurus, Rex quondam, Rexque futurus. Here lies Arthur, the once and future king. His legend endures, a story not just of a king, but of ideals worth fighting for, courage, justice, brotherhood, and the belief that even in our darkest hour, hope will rise again. Arthur lives on in every heart that still dares to dream of a better world. Part 2: The Fall and the Legacy. Beneath Camelot's beauty, cracks began to form, quietly at first, like hairline fractures in glass. The round table, once a shining symbol of brotherhood, began to splinter. The love between Queen Guinevere and Sir Lancelot, Arthur's dearest friend and greatest knight, grew from quiet glances to undeniable passion. Though their hearts longed to do right, love proved stronger than loyalty. Rumors swirled like storm clouds. What began as whispers became open suspicion. In the shadows, Mordred watched. Arthur's illegitimate son, born of a dark encounter and raised with resentment, Mordred saw not a kingdom to serve, but a crown to claim. His ambition festered as the fellowship weakened. And then came the quest for the Holy Grail. Noble in purpose, divine in origin, the journey took the knights far and wide. Many never returned, others came back changed, some broken by failure, others elevated by visions. But the bonds that once held Camelot tight had stretched thin, and some would never recover. With his best men scattered or lost, Arthur faced threats on all sides. Trust diminished, shadows grew, and when Arthur was called away to fight a distant war, Mordred made his move. He seized the throne. Declaring Arthur dead, he crowned himself king. He allied with enemies, split loyalties, and spread deceit. Upon hearing the news, Arthur returned in haste, his heart burdened, his soul weary. The armies met on the battlefield of Camlan. A fog hung heavy, as if the land itself mourned what was to come. Knights who had once fought side by side now clashed in steel and fury. Blood turned the soil red. The air rang with the cries of brother against brother. And then, amid the chaos, Arthur faced Mordred, father and son, king and traitor, hope and ruin. The battle was brutal. Arthur, though wounded and weary, summoned every ounce of strength. He struck Mordred down with a final blow, but not before Mordred's blade found its mark. Arthur fell, bleeding, broken. His loyal knights, few now and battle-worn, carried him to a quiet shore where the mist clung to the waters. There, a black barge awaited, Aboard it stood 3 queens, figures cloaked in mystery and legend. Without a word, they received the dying king. "Where do you take me?" a knight cried. And Arthur, his voice fading, whispered, "To Avalon, where I may rest until Britain needs me once more." The barge slipped into the mist, vanishing from sight, and with it, the golden age of Camelot ended. But legends do not die, they sleep. It is said Arthur rests still in Avalon, neither dead nor fully alive, that when the realm is once again in darkness, he shall rise, the once and future king. On his tomb are carved the words, "Hic eatset Arthurus, Rex quondam, Rexque futurus." Here lies Arthur, the once and future king. His story endures because it speaks to something deep within us. That true leadership is born not from blood, but from sacrifice. That unity forged through justice and honor is worth everything. That even when dreams fall and kingdoms crumble, hope waits in the mist. Arthur lives in every act of courage, in every choice made for love, not pride, in every circle of equals who choose service over self. He is more than memory. He is a promise.